Yo, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to smash that like button. You can also subscribe. This will become your new favorite YouTube channel. Sumi Does Math. You guys are so lucky to have a super cool math teacher. Anyways, how are you guys doing today, tonight, whatever? You have a test this week. Hopefully you guys are watching this maybe after the test, maybe over the weekend. It's just going to be a short video, so you can do a little video over the weekend so that you're ready for class on Monday. Because we are jumping into chapter 3 and we're going to start solving equations now. So you guys have solved equations, different kinds of equations. We're going to start our review of equations with variables on each side. And the notes start on page 129, so you can follow along on page 129 in your book. So some equations, like this one, you'll see that there's a variable on both sides of the equal sign. And to solve, we'll use properties of equality to write an equivalent equation with variables on one side of the equal sign. So we have x's on two sides, we want x on just one side. So if you look at this, I'll let you read through this, the steps here that we're using. But if we want x just on one side, we end up with going through these steps, and we're going to go step by step with some examples, so I'm just going to let you read this to start. But before we get into this, I want to show kind of what this looks like with, oops, didn't want that, that's okay. Kind of what equations look like. You can think of an equation as a balance scale, right? And if two sides are equal, that means they're balanced. That means they weigh the same. So these two equations right now are equal. And this equation represents 2x, and this side, because -1 and +1 together make 0, so this side is really just 2x plus 0, and this side is 1x, these equal 0, and then there would be 2 extra. So if we want to make this balanced, if I take away the same thing on each side, then we see that these are balanced, and I'm going to remove a 1 from each side because they each have a 1, and I'm going to remove an x from each side. And once we've done that, we can see that x equals 2. So we can take away the same thing from each side and our equation stays balanced. So if we were going to model this equation, 3x plus 1 equals 2x plus 7, here's what that looks like. 3x plus 1 equals 2x plus 7. Then what we can do is take away 2 x's from each side. And now I have x plus 1 equals 7. Well, now each side also has a 1, so I can take one of those away. So again, you see how if we want to keep it balanced, whatever we do on one side, we have to do the same thing on the other side, and that keeps that equation balanced. So we end up with our solution, x equals 6. I want you guys to look at solving equations another way using algebra tiles, and we are going to try using algebra tiles in class on Monday, but just watch how this works.
You can use algebra tiles to solve equations. First, model the equation. Use 8 1-tiles and 3 x-tiles to model 8 plus 3x on the left side of the mat. Use 5 x-tiles and 2 1-tiles to model 5x plus 2 on the right side of the mat. There needs to be x-tiles on only one side of the equation, so remove 3 x-tiles from each side of the mat. Now there are 0 x-tiles and 8 1-tiles on the left side of the mat. There are 2 x-tiles and 2 1-tiles on the right side of the mat. Next, remove 2 1-tiles from each side of the mat so that the x-tiles are by themselves on one side of the equal sign. That leaves 6 1 tiles on the left side of the mat and 2 X tiles on the right side of the mat. Since there are 2 X tiles remaining, separate the tiles into 2 equal groups. There are 3 1 tiles in each group, so X equals 3.
And I guess I should have told you guys that this problem is on page 130, and there's a spot on page 130 for you guys to put those tiles in. So if you want to go back and re-watch that, because I know it was kind of fast, so maybe re-watch it, and as you watch, pause and draw in your tiles on page 130. I do want to check and see those tiles when I check in your notes, so that'll be part of your grade for your homework, is having those tiles drawn in. So we're going to look at solving equations with variables on both sides, and I'm going to show you an algebraic way, and then on Monday we'll work with and kind of play with the algebra tiles and look at why this works. So when you have equations on both, when you have variables on both sides, you really want variables on only one side. So your first step, the first thing you want to do, a lot of people want to move numbers around, but the first step is to get variables. So work with your variables first. Get variables on only one side first. So there's an n on this side and an n on this side. I want only n's on one side. So I'm going to subtract 4n from each side. And remember that whatever you do on one side, you have to do on the other to keep it balanced. So we can subtract 4n from each side. And this is on page 131. So you can fill in the blanks, okay? And the reason we can do this is the subtraction property of equality. And when we do that, you want to make sure you're keeping things nice and neat and organized and lined up. And then when we do this subtraction, we're going to bring everything straight down. 6n minus 4n is 2n. Bring down this minus 1. Bring down the equal sign. Those cancel out. 4n minus 4n is 0. And on the right, we have a negative 5. Okay, so the first step is to get the variables on only one side. And then this is equations that you guys have solved probably a whole bunch last year in 7th grade math. These are now two-step equations. So from here, we're going to proceed to get n by itself. And we start with like the numbers kind of furthest away. The 2 and the n will stay together till the end. But we need to get rid of this negative 1. And to do that, remember that we add 1 to both sides of the equation using the additive property of equality. Again, keeping things nice and organized, bring down the 2n. Those cancel out. Bring down this equal sign. And negative 5 plus 1 is negative 4. Again, fill in these boxes on page 131. And then our last step, since it's 2 times n, the inverse of multiplying by 2 is dividing by 2, and that will cancel out this. This is just really 1. 2 over 2 is just 1n. So it's really like 1n, but we don't have to write the 1. And so n equals negative 2. Now we can check our solution. So if we want to see if we got this correct, we're going to go back to this original equation here. And in place of n, I'm going to put negative 2. And see if this works. So this is negative 12 minus 1, which is negative 13 on the right-hand side. And on the left, this is negative, or excuse me, this is the left-hand side. On the right is negative 8 minus 5, which is also negative 13. So these are equal. So you can always check your answer. You can always see if you're correct just by plugging this in. So let's look at another example. I would write this one in the margins so that you have another example to look at. I have 3x and 8x, and it doesn't matter what side we put x on. So we can put x on the left or x on the right. Some people always like to keep the x positive, so they'll always subtract the smaller from the larger. It's totally up to you. You'll get the same answer either way. I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. That way I have this larger x minus the smaller. It doesn't matter. But over here, that cancels. So on the left, we have negative 7 equals 5x plus 23. So now instead of equations with variables on both sides, we have an equation with variable on only one side, and now it's just a two-step equation. Any questions on that? If you do have questions, just write them down in the margins. That way you remember to ask in class on Monday when we go over this. Our next step is to subtract 23 from both sides. And again, be careful with your computation. Negative 7 minus 23 is negative 30 equals, again, keeping things nice and organized, 5x, and that cancels out. So what's the last step? You guys can do it. Just shout out to the computer, pretend I'm there listening. And good job, you guys got it. We divide by 5, so negative 6 equals x. Again, it doesn't matter which side the x is on. You can say negative 6 equals x or x equals negative 6. It's exactly the same thing. So why don't you guys go to the bottom of page 21 and see if you guys can do that check problem. And we will go over it in class on Monday. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe so that I can bring more awesome content to you guys like this. All right, have a good weekend.